morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning on a short notice. Appreciate your coming out this morning and letting us relay some information to you. Behind me, I have U.S. Attorney Roger Handberg will be speaking. Also, Supervising Special Agent Mike Glass with the FBI and Kurt Howard with ATF. They'll all be at the podium and give a brief statement. This is an update on a homicide that we had December 24th from 2020. We're going to give you some information. I will tell you that there's still a lot to be done. There's a lot of work that we still have to do on the case, but we wanted to give you what we have so far to this date. So with that, I will turn it over to U.S. Attorney Roger Handberg for a statement.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Taylor. Thank you for your leadership on this case and all the cases that we're privileged to get a chance to work together. So my name is Roger Handberg. As a United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties in Florida. Since taking office 3 years ago, I prioritize cases like this one, working with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to aggressively investigate and federally prosecute perpetrators of violent crime. This focused effort has resulted in an increase of more than 75% in my office's violent crime and firearms prosecutions over the past 3 years. In total, federal prosecutors with my office have charged more than 750 defendants with firearm violations during that time frame, with more than 300 of those defendants being charged in the most recent fiscal year. That is the largest number of firearms violations ever charged by my office in a single year. And there's no better place to see the results of these efforts than here in Polk County. And in my opinion, there's no better case to highlight those efforts than the one we're here to talk about today. Back on Christmas Eve in 2020, 4 family members were the victims of a shooting here in Lakeland. One of the victims, May Cooper, a 70-year-old woman who was a beloved mother, a beloved grandmother, died as a result of that shooting. Although more than 5 years has passed since that day, the family has never given up on its quest for justice. And the investigators have had the same mindset. They have never given up on their efforts to seek to do justice for the victims in this case. All of that has led here today, where we're here to announce the filing of federal charges in this case. Last Saturday, a federal criminal complaint was issued charging Takei Lewis with a federal firearms violation for his role in the alleged shooting of May Cooper. This prosecution is the result of a multi-agency investigation led by the Lakeland Police Department, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. The facts of these cases I don't have to tell anyone in this room because they're well known in this community. The names of the victims, the story as to what happened, and the names of the others who are alleged to be involved in this incident have been extensively covered in media reports over the years. But what I don't think anyone has heard until today is the incredible work that these agencies have done in bringing charges in this case. But before I get into those details, I want to take a moment to thank somebody. I want to thank my friend, Terry Coney, who is the president of the Lakeland NAACP, because it's because of him that he introduced me to the family in this case. One of the things I try to do as the United States Attorney is I try to meet as many people in the community as I can. And Terry was kind enough to have me come and talk at one of his meetings. And after that meeting, I had a chance to meet Shawanda Loams. And it was an incredible meeting, and I'm so appreciative for Terry for bringing us together. Because what she was able to tell me was she told me the story of this case. She told me what happened that night. Her children were with her. They told me what happened. They told me about the shooting. They told me about the homicide of her mother and her children's grandmother. And it touched me. And what she asked me was to seek to do justice in the case, because she wanted me to know that even though by that point several years had gone by, that she had not given up on seeking justice in this case and having the justice system do what the justice system is supposed to do. So I've been a federal prosecutor for more than 20 years, and so I know from that experience, I don't have a crystal ball, I can't promise what the results are. But what I can tell each and every member of the community is exactly what I told Shawanda when we met, which is she had my commitment, my never-ending commitment, to seek to do justice in this case. And one of the things I do as United States Attorney is I decide how we deploy the resources of my office to try to make that happen. And I thought there was no better way to do that than to have the prosecutor who's on this case, Diego Navas, work on it. And his work working with the agencies on this case has brought us to this day. But I want to thank her for coming to that meeting and putting herself out there and introducing herself to me. And we've been in contact since then. And I appreciate her commitment to justice, and I hope that she appreciates the justice we're trying to bring to her and her family. This case is a good example of the type of senseless and tragic violence that my office has vowed to investigate and prosecute. Let me tell you a little bit about the facts. On Christmas Eve, 2020, just a little more than 5 years ago, then 15-year-old Ralph Lamons met a friend in a park in Lakeland to purchase a cell phone. He brought $220 in cash. It was at that park that a group of 4 people approached Ralph and robbed him of his $220. According to Ralph, one of them literally reached into his pocket to take the money from him. When Ralph confronted the person, another member of the group pointed a gun at Ralph. That group then left the park in a car. That should have been the end of the story, but of course it wasn't. The group came back, but not all of them. The one who had stolen the money from Ralph didn't come back, but the others did. And a fight broke out between Ralph and the person who had pointed that gun at him. Well, then the person who had stolen the money returned to the park, and he wanted Ralph and that other person to fight again. Ralph refused. He called his mother to come pick him up. That should have been the end of this story, but it wasn't. When Ralph's mom arrived with her husband, Ralph told his parents how he had been robbed, and he pointed out the person who had stolen his money. He also told his parents how he had seen someone hand a gun to one of the members in the group. Ralph's father went to retrieve his own firearm from his vehicle, and he went to confront the person who had been given the gun. That person reached for his gun at this point, only to be stopped by Shawanda. Ralph and his mother wrestled that person to the ground, during which a pistol fell out of his pocket. Ralph picked that gun up, gave it to his father, and at that point, Ralph and his family left the park, taking the gun with them. But as they left, another member of the group shouted that he was going to get his father. Once more, this should have been the end of that story, but it wasn't. The Loams drove to their home, where May Cooper, Ralph's grandmother, arrived moments later. His then 13-year-old sister was also at home. Their plan, as Shawanda would later recount, on this Christmas Eve was to make gingerbread houses together. That should have been the story that was told from that night. Instead, within minutes of May's arrival, a white Buick sedan, a black Ford Edge SUV, and a red four-wheeler arrived at the residence. The group exited their vehicles and confronted Shawanda, May, and Ralph's sister, who were all outside. Ralph recalled seeing one of the men attempt to pull a firearm out of his pocket, and that's when the barrage of gunfire started. When it was over, 4 people had been shot. Ralph's dad suffered a gunshot wound to his forearm. Ralph's 13-year-old sister was shot. His mother suffered a gunshot wound to her chest. And 70-year-old May Cooper, the matriarch of this family, sustained 2 fatal gunshot wounds, which led to her death. The Lakeland Police Department responded immediately and began their investigation. And they did all the things that you do in one of these investigations. They interviewed witnesses, they obtained surveillance footage, collect casings, and spent projectiles. You see some of this in the criminal complaint that's summarizes some of the evidence in this case. They did all the things you would expect law enforcement to do, but sometimes in these cases, cases go cold, and that's what happened. Let's fast forward 2 years. One of the first times I was here as United States Attorney was in connection with a shooting that happened on January 30th of 2023 when there was a mass shooting of 11 people. It was an all-hands-on-deck situation with every agency, local, state, and federal, working together to find the perpetrators of that mass shooting. And it was in connection with that investigation that the investigators got an important break on the Christmas Eve shooting. Because what happened was on February 9th of 2023, ATF agents and Lakeland police officers searched a residence in Polk County. In that residence, they found 5 firearms, including a Care CM9 9mm pistol. And you're going to hear a lot more about that pistol. Because what the Florida Department of Law Enforcement was able to do is they were able to look at that pistol and they were able to compare, do some ballistics. And what they found was that 6 shell casings that were recovered from the scene of May Cooper's death matched that firearm. Having found the weapon that killed May Cooper and injured others, detectives with the Lakeland Police Department, working with special agents with ATF, continue to investigate the case, dedicating time and resources in interviewing witnesses, obtaining search warrants. The criminal complaint in this case is 21 pages long. It details a lot of the work that those investigators have done on this case. It has photos of the shooting. It has a timeline. It has a diagram of where the bullets were found. And it has postings from the defendant's social media account. It describes some truly incredible police work and use of technology. So 2 of the bullets that were fired by that Care firearm ended up in the exterior of the victim's home. Investigators were able to retrieve those bullets. They also were able to recover one of the bullets from May Cooper's body from her autopsy. And what they were able to do was they were able to match those bullets to that Care pistol that had been found in February 2023. And that's the one the defendant is alleged to have possessed on the day that May Cooper was killed. I cannot say enough good things about the work on this case. It's been excellent, it's been thorough, and it's been meticulous. And it has resulted in the issuance of a federal criminal complaint charging Lewis as the individual who fired the fatal bullets that killed May Cooper. Lewis is a convicted felon. In fact, he's in prison now serving an unrelated term of imprisonment. He was expected to be released from prison in early 2026, but we don't expect that to happen anymore. Because of the incredible efforts of the law enforcement agencies on this case, Lewis has been charged with possessing a firearm as a convicted felon. He has been identified as the individual who killed May Cooper, and he will be held to answer for his crimes. He will get his day in court. The allegations that I've summarized here today, well, they're just that, they're allegations. And Lewis is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. But what I can tell you is the criminal complaint that's been issued in this case is just the beginning. One of the things that we do in this county is we work very closely with State Attorney Brian Haas in his office, and we could have no better prosecution partner than his office. And part of what happens is federal prosecutors from my office and assistant state attorneys from State Attorney Haas's office meet regularly to discuss cases and to evaluate them. And this is one of these cases where we're going to be sharing the evidence that we've obtained from our federal investigation for the purpose of making sure that justice is done, whether that justice is done in state court or federal court. Our collaboration will continue. And my office's work on this case is going to continue as well. We're going to continue to partner with the Lakeland Police Department, ATF, FBI, and FDLE and follow up on each and every lead to find anyone who was involved in the Christmas Eve shooting. I know that none of us are going to rest until we are satisfied that we have charged all parties responsible for contributing to May Cooper's killing and to the shooting of 3 members of her family. I made that commitment to Shawanda, and it's a commitment that we're going to continue to try to live up to. This investigation is a great example, among many, of how local, state, and federal investigators and prosecutors are able to effectively work together to protect this community. In the last year, my office has worked hand in hand with the Lakeland Police Department, the Polk County Sheriff's Office, ATF, FBI, FDLE, and the State Attorney's Office. Together, we have charged more than 50 defendants with numerous federal violations in Polk County. Those offenses have included large-scale drug trafficking, possession of firearms and machine guns, money laundering, robbery, carjacking, fraud, and various shooting-related offenses. I'm here today to commend the agencies for their outstanding work on this case, as well as every other case that we work together that are prosecuted in federal court. I also want to commend Sheriff Grady Judd for his vision in starting the Violent Crime Task Force that has led to these incredible results and that has laid the groundwork for even more good work to be done. Make no mistake about it, investigations of the breadth and scope that led to the charges in this case, they are not easy, nor are they quick. These cases require meticulous work by excellent investigators to put together the evidence that will support prosecutions to combat violent crime. Most importantly, these investigations require police officers and agents who have unwavering dedication and commitment to continue to investigate a case, no matter how much time has passed, knowing that the families and the victims deserve justice. I want to commend everyone on this case for working together as a team to develop the evidence that has led to the federal complaint in this case and all the other cases we work together. Through that excellent work and team partnership, more than 50 defendants have been charged in federal court, and Lewis is going to get his day in court to answer for the crime with which he has been charged. I want this to be a message to anyone who seeks to commit violent crimes here in Polk County, and I've said this before, but it bears repeating. As you see from the law enforcement agencies here today, you will be investigated. And if you break the law, law enforcement officers and federal agents are going to use every lawful tool to hold you accountable for your crimes, no matter where you operate or how long it takes us to get justice in the case. And if you have violated federal law, the United States Attorney's Office is going to seek to prosecute you in federal court. We're united together in our mission to keep this community safe. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent in Charge, Kirk Howard.
Thank you, Roger. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kirk Howard. I am the Special Agent in Charge for ATF's Tampa Field Division, and I'm proud to help U.S. Attorney Hamburg and Chief Taylor make today's announcement to bring the grieving family one step closer towards closure. We joined forces with the Lakeland Police in this case because it falls squarely within ATF's public safety mission. We help investigate and arrest the community's most violent criminals and put them behind bars where they belong. Charging Lewis for the possession of the firearm as a convicted felon is only the first step in holding accountable those responsible for the senseless tragedy that left at least 3 people wounded and 1 woman deceased. Lewis is currently serving time in the Florida Department of Corrections. We anticipate taking him into federal custody in the near future. Although I can't get into operational details because this is still an active case, I'd like to share a little bit about ATF's crime gun intelligence tools this team had at its disposal. Touch DNA is a powerful forensic tool that analyzes trace samples of biological material left on evidence, like firearms, ammunition, or clothing, after being just casually handled. We also have E-Trace, which is a tool designed to help investigators quickly identify who purchased a particular firearm and how it may have ended up at a crime scene. ATF also administers the ballistic analysis program called the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, or NIBIN for short. that can generate investigative leads by digitally analyzing and comparing spent cartridge casings from seemingly unrelated crime scenes. Put simply, every gun possesses a set of unique characteristics, much like a fingerprint, where loops, whorls, and ridges come into play, that imprints onto the cartridge casing and bullets fired from it. In early 2003, more than 2 years after the shooting that killed Miss Cooper, ATF agents in the Lakeland Police Department investigated a drive-by shooting that left 11 injured. That joint investigation yielded crime guns as a standard operating procedure that were submitted for ballistics testing and scientific examination. Analysts determined that one of those firearms was used in the December 2020 shooting. And through interviews and other investigative means, we know that Lewis, who is already a convicted felon, was connected to that December 2020 shooting as well. Today's announcement is just the first step and largely due to the men and women who responded quickly to the shooting in December of 2020. The men and women of the Lakeland Police Department, the paramedics and EMS that arrived at the scene, and the crime scene technicians whose work was invaluable in this case. And although it's too early to say whether there will be more charges or more arrests, we will continue to follow the facts wherever they lead, collaborate with our state, local, and federal partners, and ultimately bring all those responsible to justice. In doing so, we hope to bring some sense of closure to the victim's family, friends, and the community. I'd like to say this: the men and women of ATF and our partners will run down every lead possible, be relentless in that, and hold those accountable who commit violent crime in our communities. Thank you, and for that, turn it back over to Chief Taylor.
Kurt. I'm going to say a few brief comments, and then we'll take any questions if you have any questions. But what you heard today was a wonderful example of the collaboration that we have, not only with our federal partners, but our state partners as well. I know you've heard me say this before, and you've heard the gentleman behind me say the exact same thing, but these things are very time-consuming. They take a lot of time to do it right, and that's exactly what we did in this case. And it's the men and women that are standing in the back of the room, the detectives and the agents that put in the hard work and the late hours and the late nights. I know sometimes it feels like that we're not doing anything and things are moving along very slowly, but I can assure you, not only this case, but other cases that are unsolved, we continue to work on those as well, and we'll continue to do so until we bring justice for everyone. So with that, we will be happy to stand for any questions that you have.
I'm sure it's in this complaint, but Agent Howard mentioned touch DNA. Was Lewis's DNA found on the bullets?
I can tell you that there was scientific proof, and I don't want to get into great detail. I don't think it's that granular in the complaint affidavit, but it's very obvious once this goes to trial that he was the one that was holding the handgun and firing the handgun. There is some video evidence, both social media evidence and surveillance video evidence, that confirms that he did it. There also, as he said, the NIBIN information, the striations that were on the shell casings and the bullets that were recovered confirmed that was the weapon. So we feel very confident in making that assessment.
And he was, also seen on social media posing with the gun. Is that right? Days or leading up to that?
That's in the complaint, yes. Days prior to and after as well.
Mr. Hamburg, you mentioned sharing evidence with Mr. Haas's office. I just want to clarify that means like a murder charge or attempted murder charges are possible?
Yeah, and I would defer to State Attorney Haas as to what potential charges, that they would look at, but they would have the full range of potential state violations, for them to consider. And we do that in all of our cases, and that information flows in both directions. And one of the things we do with State Attorney Haas's office is we try to figure out where it makes most sense for a case to be prosecuted. And it's a really good collaborative relationship, but I would imagine those would be some of the charges they would be considering potentially.
From 2020 until the bullets were matched in 2023, can you talk about what investigators are doing to make sure the case doesn't go cold?
Sure. Search warrants, we're doing a lot of search warrants, we're doing a lot of subpoenas, we're doing interviews, we're waiting on lab work. As you can imagine, this is not the only case that we're submitting to Florida Department of Law Enforcement, to the FBI, to ATF to be processed. So obviously homicides take a higher priority. They kind of go to the front of the line as far as the lab work goes, but there's still a time frame that we have to wait on that. It takes time to get the search warrants, it takes time to do all the interviews, Mrs. Lamone's can tell you, and the Lamone family can tell you that we're talking with them, we're having meetings with them. So that stuff takes time, and these are not quick investigations if they're done correctly. They take a little time. So during that 2-year period, we're working on all those things.
And what was the most challenging part? Did you have any trouble with like witnesses, or like what was the bumps?
Well, they're all, yeah, sure. They're all these cases are very complicated, can be very complicated when you have a lot of witnesses involved. You've got a lot of weapons that were involved, a lot of folks that were shooting that we have to identify those, and then we have the 11 people shot 2 years later over on Iowa, and we end up, matching, doing search warrants for that. I think there were well over 10 search warrants and subpoenas that were done on that. So then we tie those two cases together, which is another piece of evidence. So there is a lot of behind-the-scenes work that I told you these men and women do every single day. And it's not just the Lakeland Police Department. That's happening at the Sheriff's Office. It's happening at every organization, every law enforcement organization across this country. But I can tell you specifically, I know what happens here at the Lakeland Police Department. And that's what happens here, and those things take time. People get frustrated. They want things to come to this is not CSI. It doesn't happen in 30 minutes. We don't get DNA hits in 10 or 15 minutes, on a program. Those things take days and weeks and months, and in this case, years.
Can you say how, if at all, Mr. Lewis was involved in the January mass shooting? And the gun was related to it.
The January, you're talking about the one on Iowa?
Yeah.
I don't want to go into great detail on that right now. We know that the weapon that was used in that shooting on Iowa, in the January shooting, that weapon was also recovered in a search warrant, and that weapon was also identified as the weapon that was used to kill Miss Cooper. So we have reason to believe that he certainly was, if not there personally, he was intimately involved in the shooting on Iowa. All right. Anything else? We certainly provided the complaints. I think we provided a photograph of Mr. Lewis. So if you need anything else from us, certainly we'll get in touch with us and we'll provide you everything that we can. So thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate everything that you guys do. All right. Thank y'all.